Okay, 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 okay. I'm studying the Bible in Toronto. 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 Studying the Bible with Mike, Sam, Pat. These other YouTubers are just so trash. Hit the thumbs up if you want to support. Go follow Mike as he follows the Lord. I'm studying the Bible in Toronto. 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 You better watch out, Mike's calling out the shills. If you're not free grace, you need to sit down and chill. We're not hyper grace, you know we keep it real. Eternally secure, you know that we're sealed. We don't back low, we're not workspace heretics. Mike's not in it for the money, trying to get a lick. They out here selling their souls for a couple clicks. Becoming Freemasons so they can't just get rich. I'm studying the Bible in Toronto. 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 Shout out to Mike, Sam, Pat. Check out his channel, Toronto Bible Study. Subscribe and like.
Chapter 12. Whoso loveth instruction loveth knowledge, but he that hateth reproof is brutish. A good man obtaineth favour of the Lord, but a man of wicked devices will he condemn. A man shall not be established by wickedness, but the root of the righteous shall not be moved. A virtuous woman is a crown to her husband, but she that maketh ashamed is as rottenness in his bones. The thoughts of the righteous are right, but the counsels of the wicked are deceit. The words of the wicked are to lie in wait for blood, but the mouth of the upright shall deliver them. The wicked are overthrown and are not, but the house of the righteous shall stand. A man shall be commended according to his wisdom, but he that is of a perverse heart shall be despised. He that is despised and hath a servant is better than he that honoureth himself and lacketh bread. A righteous man regardeth the life of his beast, but the tender mercies of the wicked are cruel. He that tilleth his land shall be satisfied with bread, but he that followeth vain persons is void of understanding. The wicked desireth the net of evil men, but the root of the righteous yieldeth fruit. The wicked is snared by the transgression of his lips, but the just shall come out of trouble. A man shall be satisfied with good by the fruit of his mouth, and the recompense of a man's hands shall be rendered unto him. The way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but he that hearkeneth unto counsel is wise. A fool's wrath is presently known, but a prudent man covereth shame. He that speaketh truth showeth forth righteousness, but a false witness deceit. There is that speaketh like the piercings of a sword, but the tongue of the wise is health. The lip of truth shall be established forever, but a lying tongue is but for a moment. Deceit is in the heart of them that imagine evil, but to the counselors of peace is joy. There shall no evil happen to the just, but the wicked shall be filled with mischief. Lying lips are abomination to the Lord, but they that deal truly are his delight. A prudent man concealeth knowledge, but the heart of fools proclaimeth foolishness. The hand of the diligent shall bear rule, but the slothful shall be unto tribute. Heaviness in the heart of man maketh it stoop, but a good word maketh it glad. The righteous is more excellent than his neighbor, but the way of the wicked seduceth them. The slothful man roasteth not that which he took in hunting, but the substance of a diligent man is precious. In the way of righteousness is life, and in the pathway thereof there is no death.
Hello, welcome to Toronto Bible Study. Oh, I didn't link the video on Discord. Yeah, sorry, man. No, I forgot about it. I should do that. Yeah, I remember to do that next time. Gotta advertise. Anyway, how are you, everyone? In case it's just me and Nicholas right now, I think, but you never know who might show up. But anyway, God bless everyone. And today we're reading we're gonna hopefully finish the Book of Esther, which is a wonderful book again. Oh, I guess they're all great, but this one's really nice too. I really like this one. Anyway, okay, so let me say a quick prayer and then we'll get started. Heavenly Father, Almighty God, thank you so much for this chance to study your word, Father. This wonderful book of Esther is so many lessons here for us and so many lessons in your providence. I think this book tells us a lot about your loving guidance of your people in history. And we know that you guide us in this way as well and never let us slip, never let us fall. And we thank you for this, Father. We thank your Holy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Okay. So, yeah, I forgot to... Hey, Rambo, what's up, brother? Yeah, I forgot to link the video on Discord. I'll do that next time. Okay, so we're going to read the Book of Esther. Sorry, guys, I'm super tired right now. I got like no sleep last night and now I had to get up early this morning and stuff. But it should be good. Love this book. Love this book. All right. So now let me just recap. So chapter 1 and 2. First, we're talking about a period around the end of the Jewish captivity, or maybe after the Jewish captivity. Maybe this is after the period of time when Nehemiah and them were being discussed. Some people do argue that this is the same. This Ahasuerus, because nowadays people will say this Ahasuerus is actually Xerxes. Xerxes, that's the English name for this guy. And then so because of that, some people say that the Artaxerxes in Nehemiah, the king in Nehemiah is Artaxerxes. So some people say it's the same guy. And then in Nehemiah when it says how it says the queen, it talks about like the queen was there or something like that. Hold on, let me see. Hanani, one of my brethren, and they said unto me, and then, okay, Nehemiah is the cupbearer in the throne room of Artaxerxes. Okay, but before this, he heard all this stuff about how the walls of Jerusalem have been torn down and all the gates are burnt up, right? So now he says his prayer for God to give him strength to fix these things, and then Artaxerxes, he's with the king. He has wine before the king. He's giving him his wine. The king asks him if he's sick, why are you sad if you're not sick? Like, it must be sorrow of your heart. And then Nehemiah says, "Let the king live forever." He prays to the God of heaven. If it pleases the king, he asked the king so that he could go back and build up Judah, the walls again, right? And the king said unto me, the queen also sitting by him, right? Which is an interesting little side comment because we never hear about her again in the whole book. And it's just very odd, right? That they put that there. So some people argue that queen is actually Esther, So it's the same exact Xerxes and everything, because it's not exactly clear what the timeline here, obviously Nehemiah is after Ezra, but the timeline for Esther is not quite as clear. So That's why. But I would argue that it's probably another king. I think that's probably the better theory to go with here. But it is very interesting that they mentioned the queen sitting by him. But anyway, so then okay, so this king, this Ahasuerus, Xerxes, is having a huge party at Shushan the palace. That's his winter palace. Okay, and he has a feast for all his servants, everything. His wife, he called. Then after they've been drinking, this has been going on for like 180 days or something, 104 score days. And so everybody's there, and they've been drinking and all this stuff. And then then he calls his wife. But I don't think they're super. Some people say that they're just super drunk, but I don't think it says that either. Because it says that the drinking was according to the law. None did compel. So I feel like they're not drinking overly, because that's one of the arguments for why Vashti's in the right here. But anyway, so his queen is Vashti, and he summons her to come show the beauty of her to all his princes and stuff, and she refuses. So that becomes this big thing, and then everyone's like, okay, he has to send her away. He sends her away, and we never hear about her again for the rest of the story. Okay, Vashti, the queen. And she's become this kind of feminist hero now. And some people say, they try to get into her head and all this stuff. I think the simple lesson here is just that she's a disobedient wife, and for that reason, she's sent away, because nobody wants a disobedient wife. I mean, we read about this in Proverbs. This wife that is argumentative like this, it's worse than living in the desert. It's worse than living in the desert. That's what Proverbs says. Okay, wife like this. So I think that's all it is. I think that's the lesson here for us, And then also because Esther is a very obedient wife, right? So I think that's the clear lesson here, just that she's disobedient. She gets sent away. We never hear about her again. So, or we hear about her a little bit in chapter 2, just right at the beginning, and then we never hear about her again. So anyway, so he sends her away. Then there's this kind of beauty contest, basically, of all these beautiful virgins from all over the empire coming to compete to become the next queen. But right away, Esther is being blessed by God again. Oh, by the way, you know what's interesting about this book? That the word God is never mentioned in this book. God is never mentioned, either like God the person, or never his name, or nothing. It's never mentioned in this book. So it's an interesting fact about the book. What we can see is that practically everything that happens in the story, it's basically kind of telling you that God is the one that made this happen. I think the king was afraid of her disobedience, but translate down into other households, causing dissension in homes and husband. Yeah, that was what his advisors said. So his advisors, because he asked them, because what should we do unto the Queen Vashti? Because he was very angry, right? What should we do to the Queen Vashti according to the law, because she had not performed the commandment of the king by the chamberlains? And Memucan answered before the king and princes. This guy Memucan is the main guy who was putting this forward, this idea. I saw that from the cross quiz. We have a quiz on our Discord about like stuff like this. They ask you like Bible trivia stuff. It's hilarious. Anyway, so Memucan, this guy. Oh yeah, I don't know. That's all right, man. But yeah, it's good to think about, because all this stuff is part of the story. Like, these characters. Like, the thing is, when you read this story, it's just like you just read it like a story, because it's very engaging. It's very well written in that sense, right? But the thing is, all of these characters have a little lesson for us, and Well, and there's a lot of debate about actually how you're supposed to interpret this story. Now, like I say, a lot of people take Vashti as some kind of feminist hero. And for that reason, a lot of people have questioned whether we should see people such as Esther and Mordecai as like these heroic or heroic figures in the book, or whether they're kind of being questioned morally in this book. But I would say they're not. I would say they certainly are the heroes of the book. What's interesting is that the fact that, for example, one thing that I heard one guy say online just now when I was doing some research for this video, the guy, you know, those guys, what are they called? Bible Project, you know, Bible Project. They were trying to say that Esther is not necessarily a good queen because she married this foreigner, right? But like I was showing you guys the other day, the Bible actually commands them to marry and stuff like that, right? When they go into the captivity, right? When the God of Israel, so saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, unto all that are carried away captives, whom I have caused to be carried away from Jerusalem unto Babylon. Build ye houses and dwell in them, plant gardens and eat the fruit of them. Take ye wives and beget sons and daughters, and take wives for your sons and give your daughters to husbands, that they may bear sons and daughters, that ye may be increased there and not diminished. Now, this is Jeremiah telling the people of Israel, the people of Judah, before they get taken away to Babylon, what they should do when they get there. So if you ever hear those guys Bible Project, those people like Bible Project, they tell all kinds of wrong things, man. Oh yeah. Bible Project, yeah, man, they're super sketchy, dude. They have too many errors in their presentations. I do see the king. Yeah. I mean, so the king is certainly like this figure. Although he's blessed by God, I think he is basically like a good kind of guy, but he's also very foolish. You know, he's not a wise king, and I think that's definitely a theme in this book. Yeah, Esther was always, according to the fear of God, Esther is absolutely, I would argue, a moral exemplar for us. She's a good wife. She's a good servant of God. She's our sister, and she's amazing. Okay. Mordecai is also a good example for us. So Mordecai and Esther are kind of both the kind of heroes of this book, you might say. Of course, God, once again, I would say, although God is never mentioned in this book, the fact that he's not mentioned is a clue to how everything in the story is happening because of his will. Okay, and you'll see things again and again. These little things will happen just to suit God's plan. And it's because everything is all according to his plan. Everything always happens according to his will, you know? Amen. But anyway, so back to Esther now. Oh, sorry. So this guy, he gave the bad advice. All right, well, it's advice anyway, good or bad. He gave the advice, right? Then you have this beauty contest thing, whatever. And as soon as Esther gets in, they start giving her all the best things, giving her seven handmaidens and all this stuff, the best place to go sit with her things, you know, because that's like just like with Joseph, God is blessing her so that she gets everything she needs, so that she'll win the contest. Become the queen, and because like all this thing is all part of God's plan. Everything that's happening. Yeah, God's hand is so obvious. Exactly. Thank you. So anyway, so now we're on to. Oh, by the way, at the end of chapter 2, now this is the other part of the story that's interesting. What happens is after Esther gets taken away to. So Esther was taken unto King Ahasuerus in his house royal in the 10th month. All right. And the king loved Esther above all the women, and she obtained grace and favor more than all the virgins. So the royal crown upon her had made her queen instead of Vashti. Okay. And then they made a feast. The virgins were gathered together. The second time Mordecai sat. Then Mordecai sat in the king's gate. Now this is interesting too. Mordecai has now reached a level of esteem, some kind of leadership level, kind of, you might say. That's what it means to sit in the gate. Is this, you're like kind of like a big person in the community, well respected. Your opinion is well regarded, and these people at the gates would do kind of would make rulings on certain things, like when people have certain legal things or different disputes or whatnot, they would go to those people at the gate, and they would deal with. So if you get to sit at the king's gate, that means you're coming up, you're well respected in that community, okay? But Esther had not shown her kindred nor her people. So, because Mordecai told her, don't tell anybody that you're a Jew. And she did. She always obeyed Mordecai because she's a good girl, once again. Because he's like her father, right? He treated her like a daughter. And so she treats her like a father. She's obedient. She honors her father. In those days, while Mordecai sat in the king's gate, two of the king's chamberlains sought to lay hand on the king Ahasuerus. Like that means they were gonna like kill him, or hurt him or something. Probably they were gonna kill him, right? And the thing was known to Mordecai, told to Esther, the queen. Esther certified the king thereof in Mordecai's name. And then they investigated it. They found those guys. They were hanged on a tree. But it was written in the book of the Chronicles before the king. So it was written in the book of the Chronicles before the king. And remember this. Esther certified it in Mordecai's name, okay? And that was written in the book of the Chronicles before the king, okay? Remember that. So now we get into chapter 3 now. Now, this chapter is a bit, I guess I'll just read the whole chapter, okay? Talk about it. Let me think, actually. Should I read this whole thing? Yeah, I guess so. Okay, I'll just read the whole thing. Okay. After these things did King Ahasuerus promote Haman, the son of Hammedatha, or Haman. We might say Haman. Haman in Hebrew, but Haman is, most people in English say Haman. After these things did King Ahasuerus promote Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, and advanced him and set his seat above all the princes that were with him. And all the king's servants that were in the king's gate bowed and reverenced Haman, for the king had so commanded concerning him. Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence. Then the king's servants which were in the king's gate said unto Mordecai, why transgressest thou the king's commandment? Now it came to pass, when they spake daily unto him, and he hearkened not unto them, that they told Haman to see whether Mordecai's matters would stand, for he had told them that he was a Jew. When Haman saw that Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence, then was Haman full of wrath. And he thought scorn to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had showed him the people of Mordecai. Therefore Haman sought to destroy all the Jews that were throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus, even the people of Mordecai. In the first month, that is, the month Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, they cast pur, that is, the lot, before Haman from day to day, and from month to month, to the 12th month, that is, the month Adar. And Haman said unto King Ahasuerus, there is a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of thy kingdom, and their laws are diverse from all the people. Neither keep they the king's laws. Therefore it is not for the king's profit to suffer them. If it please the king, let it be written that they may be destroyed. And I will pay 10,000 talents of silver to the hands of those that have the charge of the business, to bring it into the king's treasuries. And the king took his ring from his hand and gave it unto Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the Jews' enemy. And the king said unto Haman, the silver is given to thee, and the people also, to do with them as it seemeth good to thee. Then were the king's scribes called on the 13th day of the first month, and there was written according to all that Haman had commanded unto the king's lieutenants, and to the governors that were over every province, and to the rulers of every people of every province, according to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language. In the name of King Ahasuerus was it written and sealed with the king's ring. And the letters were sent by post to all the king's provinces, to destroy, to kill, and to cause to perish all Jews, both young and old, little children and women, in one day, even upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month Adar, and to take the spoil of them for a prey. The copy of the writing for a commandment to be given, and every province was published unto all people, that they should be ready against that day. The post went out, being hastened by the king's commandment, and the decree was given at Shushan the palace. And the king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city Shushan was perplexed. So what's this all about? What do you guys think about this so far? Okay. So Ahasuerus promoted Haman, the son of Hammedatha, even though it was Mordecai who actually got him saved from these people, these assassins. For some reason, the king appoints this guy. So I think this is a sign of how the king's not that bright. He's not that smart of a guy, you know. But he promotes this guy, Haman, the son of Hammedatha, that's the Agagite. This thing, the Agagite, this is because this guy is related to this king of the Amalekites named Agag. Okay, I think it's 1 Samuel 14. No, it's later on in this. Maybe 15. Oh yeah, see how he took Agag, the king of the Amalekites, alive, and utterly destroyed all the people with the edge of the sword. But he's not supposed to do that. He's supposed to kill everything. He's supposed to wipe them all out, and not take any spoil. But he spared Agag and the best of the sheep and of the oxen, the fatlings, and all that. He spared those things. He's not supposed to do that, right? But the important thing here is that this guy, Haman, he's an Agagite. He's an Amalekite. These people, the Amalek people, the Amalekites, they're like these enemies of the Jews. You know, they're actually descended from Abraham. They're from one of his concubines, this woman Keturah. But anyway, sorry, I don't want to get too boring. Sorry, guys, it's just getting boring. Anyway, so that's the Agagite. That's what. So he's an Amalekite. He's part of their enemy people. Okay, that's important here. These people are already the enemies of the Jews, and also he hates the Jews now. You know. But then, okay, the king sets him up above everyone else in the whole kingdom. And all the king's servants that were in the king's gate bowed and reverenced Haman, but Mordecai did not bow. Why? Because he's a Jew? Because he has no king but God? And he doesn't feel that he should bow to this person? It's not quite clear exactly why Mordecai refuses to bow here, but he doesn't. And we might say it's because similar to like when those gentlemen in Daniel chapter 3, Daniel's friends, how they don't bow to the statue of Nebuchadnezzar, right? This may be similar to that. So Haman, when he hears that, he hates Mordecai, right? And then he finds out, and he's not even, it's not enough for him to just destroy Mordecai. He wants to destroy all the Jews throughout the whole kingdom. Okay? And somehow he managed to convince. Oh yeah, by the way, this thing they cast Pur, that's like a lot. It's like their Purim, it's like their Persian lot, you know, but it's different than the Umim and Tumim of the Jews, you know, of the Hebrews that they would use. But anyway, so that's their lot. They would cast day to day. But then Haman said unto the king, Xerxes, about the Jews. He's not telling them that it is the Jews. He's not saying that. Because then Xerxes might say, wait a minute. Mordecai's a Jew. Why are you saying this? But he just tells them, there's a certain people that they're doing this stuff and we got to take them out. The king's like, okay, let it be written. So this is why the king's too trusting of Naaman, of Haman. And so look at the post is to destroy, to kill, and to cause to perish all Jews, both young and old, little children and women, in one day. Okay, this order has gone out to the whole empire. Okay. And so the people are being told they should be ready against that day. Any Jews that are in the area, just kill them, wipe them out, even the little kids. And the decree was given in Shushan. But the city of Shushan, the city where the king's winter palace is, Shushan the palace, they were perplexed. They were like, what? Why do you want to kill all the Jews? What is this? So the people are like, kind of like, what is this? This is weird. You know, the king's just going along with whatever Haman says. You know? Yeah, he's a betrayer, man. He's wicked. But anyway, so now in chapter 4 now. I guess in chapter 4 we should read the whole thing too. It's about 17 verses, okay? When Mordecai perceived all that was done, Mordecai rent his clothes and put on sackcloth with ashes and went out into the midst of the city and cried with a loud and a bitter cry, and came even before the king's gate, for none might enter into the king's gate clothed with sackcloth. And in every province, whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree came, there was a great mourning among the Jews, and fasting and weeping and wailing, and many lay in sackcloth and ashes. So Esther's maids and her chamberlains came and told it her. Then was the queen exceedingly grieved, and she sent raiment to clothe Mordecai, and to take away his sackcloth from him, but he received it not. Then called Esther for Hatak, one of the king's chamberlains, whom he had appointed to attend upon her, and gave him a commandment to Mordecai to know what it was and why it was. So Hatak went forth to Mordecai unto the street of the city, which was before the king's gate. And Mordecai told him of all that had happened unto him, and of the sum of the money that Haman had promised to pay to the king's treasuries for the Jews to destroy them. Also he gave him the copy of the writing of the decree that was given at Shushan to destroy them, to show it unto Esther, and to declare it unto her, and to charge her that she should go in unto the king, to make supplication unto him, and to make request before him for her people. And Hatak came and told Esther the words of Mordecai. Again Esther spake unto Hatak, and gave him commandment unto Mordecai. All the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces do know that whosoever, whether man or woman, shall come unto the king into the inner court, who is not called, there is one law of his to put him to death, except such to whom the king shall hold out the golden scepter, that he may live. But I have not been called to come unto the king these 30 days. And they told to Mordecai Esther's words. Then Mordecai commanded to answer Esther, think not with thyself that thou shalt escape in the king's house more than all the Jews. For if thou altogether holdest thy peace at this time, then shall their enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place. But thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed. And who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? Then Esther bade them return Mordecai this answer. Go, gather together all the Jews that are present in Shushan, and fast ye for me, and neither eat nor drink 3 days, night or day. I also and my maids will fast likewise, and so will I go in unto the king, which is not according to the law. And if I perish, I perish. So Mordecai went his way and did according to all that Esther had commanded him. So this is a very interesting chapter as well. Esther, first Mordecai hears about it, rents his clothes. So he's grieving. Rent the clothes, sackcloth and ashes. It means they're grieving and something really terrible is happening, right? He came before the king's gates. Because remember, he was sitting in the king's gate before, right? With all the powerful men, and he's like a kind of man of authority in the place. But now he can't go in. You can't go into the king's gate. But he went in front of it in his sackcloth and ashes. He's saying publicly that look what you've done to me, you know? And the Jews are fasting and wailing as well, sackcloth and ashes. Esther's maids tell her about it, so she's grieved. Sent clothes to Mordecai, but he wouldn't receive it. She sent Hatak, the chamberlain, to tell Mordecai, or to find out from Mordecai. Hatak goes out to find him, finds out. Mordecai told him all the things. And the money that Haman had promised to anyone who killed the Jews. And he gave the copy of the writing, showed it to Esther. And then Hatak tells Esther. Esther told him to come back and told Hatak to go back to Mordecai. And she says this: all the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces do know that you can't go into the king's inner court unless you're called by the king. And if you do, he'll put you to death. Unless he decides, okay, it's all right, I'll let this one off. And he holds out the scepter, then you have to touch the scepter, then you can live. But she hasn't been called into his presence in 30 days. So she's saying, if I go out there to ask him about your situation, I might die. She told Mordecai that. Then he said, look, what are you going to do? You think you're going to escape in there? Look what he says here. For thou altogether holdest thy peace at this time. If you don't say anything now, then shall their enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place. Because he knows that God will not allow the Jews to be destroyed. So he knows that somehow something's going to happen. But you and your house will be destroyed because you didn't do what you're supposed to do at this time. So it's very interesting, right? What he's saying here, right? I mean, you got to really reflect on this, right? But he also says this: who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? Like again, commenting on how God is in control. Yeah, it's her time to speak up, and so when we have time to speak up, we have to speak up. You know, he's saying if thou altogether hold thy peace at this time. Still, God's will will still be done. The Jews are not going to get destroyed. Nothing's going to destroy the Jews. But still, you and your house will be destroyed. Your father's house. So he's saying, so it's just like when James says, if a man knows to do sin and he doesn't do anything, if a man knows something is sin and he doesn't do anything, then if a man knows to do good and he doesn't do it, then that's sin, right? Where is that in James? Oh, it's in 4:17. Wow, so dumb. Therefore, to him that knoweth to do good and doeth it not, to him it is sin. So it would be a sin for Esther to know that she could do some good here, but if she doesn't do it, it's a sin. Even though she's risking her life, though. She is risking her life. Yeah? So all this stuff is worth just reflecting on, okay? I'm not saying you have to risk your life or anything. I'm just saying, oh, thanks. Yeah, you knew. I should have just checked with you. Anyway. So she says this: go gather the Jews, fast for me. If I perish, I perish. Look, you see? So she tells them to fast 3 days and nights, and my maid is also a fast. So will I go in unto the king, which is not according to the law. And if I perish, I perish. This is the amazing thing she says, she's willing to sacrifice her life for her people. Similar to Jesus, right? You might even say she's like a type of Jesus, you know? So Mordecai went his way and did according to all that Esther had commanded him. Okay, so now chapter 5. I should probably read this whole thing too. Maybe I'll just stop at, okay, let me stop at the first part. Now it came to pass on the third day that Esther put on her royal apparel and stood in the inner court of the king's house, over against the king's house. And the king sat upon his royal throne in the royal house, over against the gate of the house. And it was so, when the king saw Esther the queen standing in the court, that she obtained favor in his sight. And the king held out to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand. So Esther drew near and touched the top of the scepter. Then said the king unto her, What wilt thou, Queen Esther? And what is thy request? It shall be even given thee to the half of the kingdom. And Esther answered, If it seem good unto the king, let the king and Haman come this day unto the banquet that I have prepared for him. Then the king said, Cause Haman to come to make haste, that he may do as Esther has said. So the king and Haman came to the banquet that Esther had prepared. And the king said unto Esther at the banquet of wine, What is this? What is thy petition? And it shall be granted thee. And what is thy request? Even to the half of the kingdom it shall be performed. Then answered Esther and said, My petition and my request is, if I have found favor in the sight of the king, and if it please the king to grant my petition and to perform my request, let the king and Haman come to the banquet that I shall prepare for them, and I will do tomorrow as the king has said. So Esther has a plan, right? She invites the king and Haman to a banquet in her quarters or something, and she set up some kind of dinner for them, like a wine banquet, it says, right? And so the king's just like, what would you like? And I'll give you up to half the kingdom. He loves her, right? So he's about to give her anything she wants. He says, okay, all right, I'll ask you tomorrow. Come again tomorrow. I have another banquet for you, and then come, and then I'll tell you. How did she know to put it off to the next day? We don't know. Why didn't she just ask him right there? We're not sure. What does he say? Oh, interesting. I hadn't thought about her being a type of Jesus and her willingness to die for her people. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of not a very popular view, I don't think, but it's certainly possible. Anyway, so I'll finish this chapter. Then went Haman forth that day, joyful and with a glad heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gates, that he stood not up, nor moved for him, he was full of indignation against Mordecai. Nevertheless, Haman refrained himself, and when he came home, he sent and called for his friends and Zeresh, his wife. And Haman told them of the glory of his riches, and the multitude of his children, and all the things wherein the king had promoted him, and how he had advanced him above the princes and servants of the king. Haman said, moreover, Yea, Esther the queen did let no man come in with the king unto the banquet that she had prepared but myself. And tomorrow am I invited unto her also with the king. And all this availeth me nothing, so long as I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate. Then says Zeresh his wife and all his friends unto him, Let a gallows be made of 50 cubits high, and tomorrow speak thou unto the king, that Mordecai may be hanged thereon. Then go thou in merrily with the king unto the banquet. And the thing pleased Haman, and he caused the gallows to be made. All right, so let's think about this now. So Haman leaves the first banquet of Esther, and he's very happy. But he sees Mordecai, and he's back to his anger at Mordecai, because Mordecai will not bow to him. Mordecai is sitting at the king's gate. Mordecai is not some chump, right? He's like an important person in the community and in the king's eyes. He's sitting at the gate, and this is bothering him immensely, right? But he refrained himself. He came home and told his wife and his friends. Told them all the glory, all the things. Even Esther, the queen, invited me into the queen. Only me and the king were in. I was sitting with the queen today. We were having dinner. And only me and the king were there. Yeah, I know the trap. Hilarious. It's hilarious what happens in the next chapter, I think. But then, even though the queen is inviting me, only me, her, and the king in a dinner, and I'm going to again tomorrow. It's a big deal, you know. But still, all this availeth me nothing, so long as I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate. I can't. It just drives him insane. And then Zeresh, his wife, who is like, this is an interesting character, this woman, but even his friends are into it too. Let the gallows be made of 50 cubits high, and speaking to the king that he may be hanged. Then go thou unto the banquet. Haman makes the gallows. He has set himself a trap here. That's very true. But you know what, you guys? It's only 7:40, so we're doing pretty good. All right. So chapter 6, once again. I'll probably read the whole thing. Okay. So now Haman has built the gallows. He plans to hang Mordecai the next day, right? That's his plan, okay? But that night, the king could not sleep. Once again, this is the hand of God working, okay? The king could not sleep, and he commanded them to bring the book of records of the Chronicles, and they were read before the king. Why? Why did he bring this book? Why? But remember, this is from chapter 2 at the end, when Mordecai foiled the plot to kill the king. It was written in this book. If for some reason he just decides, oh yeah, let me read it. At midnight he just can't sleep, you know. It's tomorrow. How can we message you? Probably I got some issues. I want another Christian thing to do. You can send me an email. It's on my community thing or something like that on the channel. There's the email for me, okay? Or you can go to the Discord, okay? Sorry, bro. I hope you're all right. I'll pray for you, man. Yeah, God is so amazing. It's true. So he couldn't sleep. Okay, boys. God bless, brother. Don't worry, man. We'll take care of that. Okay. On the night, the king could not sleep. Oh, let me just read it to you. On that night, the king could not sleep, and he commanded to bring the book of records of the Chronicles, and they were read before the king. And it was found written that Mordecai had told of Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's chamberlains, the keepers of the door, who sought to lay hands on the king Ahasuerus. And the king said, what honor and dignity hath been done to Mordecai for this? Then said the king's servants that ministered unto him, there is nothing done for him. And the king said, who is in the court? Now Haman was come into the outward court of the king's house, to speak unto the king, to hang Mordecai on the gallows that he had prepared for him. And the king's servants said unto him, behold, Haman standeth in the court. And the king said, let him come in. So Haman came in, and the king said unto him, what shall be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honor? Now Haman thought in his heart, to whom would the king delight to do honor more than to myself? And Haman answered the king, for the man whom the king delighteth to honor, let the royal apparel be brought which the king useth to wear, and the house that the king, and the horse that the king rideth upon, and the crown royal which is set upon his head. And let this apparel and horse be delivered to the hand of one of the king's most noble princes, that they may array the man withal whom the king delighteth to honor, and bring him on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaim before him, thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delighteth to honor. Then the king said to Haman, make haste, and take the apparel and the horse, as thou hast said, and do even so to Mordecai the Jew, that sitteth at the king's gates. Let nothing fail of all that thou hast spoken. Then took Haman the apparel and the horse, and arrayed Mordecai, and brought him on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaimed before him, Thus shall it be done unto the man of the king that letteth to honor. And Mordecai came again to the king's gates, but Haman hasted to his house mourning, and having his head covered. And Haman told Zeresh his wife and all his friends everything that had befallen him. Then said his wise men and Zeresh his wife unto him, If Mordecai be of the seed of the Jews, before whom thou hast begun to fall, thou shalt not prevail against him, but shalt surely fall before him. While they were yet talking with him, came the king's chamberlains, and hasted to bring Haman unto the banquet that Esther had prepared. So crazy. I love this story. So like I was saying, it's that particular night. That's the night that the king can't sleep. Just the night before, Haman plans to hang Mordecai on the gallows, right? That's the night the king can't sleep. That's the night that he commanded to bring the book of records of the Chronicles. And that's the Chronicles that was written. We read about this earlier, chapter 2, that it was written, the matter when Mordecai got him saved from these guys who were going to hurt him, Big Dan and Fish. It was written in the book of the Chronicles before the king. So now, for some reason, he never did anything to Mordecai the whole time, but now, all of a sudden, the day before, what's his name was going to hang him on the gallows, that's the day the king just can't sleep, and all of a sudden, he wants to go read this book. Why would he want to read that book? Why? Right? It's because God is doing this. And it's similar to like this thing from Proverbs. I think it's Proverbs 21. Let me see. Sorry, you guys. I always forget what little chapter it is. Oh, 21:1. The king's heart is in the hand of the Lord, as the rivers of water. He turneth it whithersoever he will. So God decides what the king's going to want to do and stuff. You know, he manipulates the kings. I don't think he does this to everyone, but I think he will willingly do this to kings because the kings he raises up kings, right, to be in these places of power for his purpose, right? So I think what he does is he manipulates them in ways like we see here in Esther. See what it says here? The Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will, and setteth up over it the basest of men. Now, this king Ahasuerus, maybe not the best king. I don't think he's the basest of men, but he's not a very good king, not very wise. But God can change his heart like the river of water and make him do the right thing that God needs him to do. So they found that Mordecai had warned him. So he says, now what are we going to do? What are we going to do for this guy? What's been done for him? What honor and dignity has been done to Mordecai for this? And they said, there's nothing done for him. So Haman, calls him Haman. Haman is there to orchestrate the death of Mordecai. I look at it, they have more responsibility, and therefore God leads them with a heavier hand. Like teachers of God's word have the greater judgment. Yeah, there's that aspect too, for sure. But yeah, so Haman his plan complete backfire of his plan. This is once again God's doing, right? This day when he had this plan to hang up Mordecai, this is the day that the king, he couldn't sleep. He reads that particular book, sees that particular thing about Mordecai, And right when he's about to walk in and get the king to hang Mordecai, instead the king's asking him, how can I honor Mordecai? But he doesn't say the man's name. So this guy thinks it's him. So it's just everything backfired. All his bad tendencies, all his plans backfired against him. He even his own arrogance, his own conceit that king wants to honor me probably. So what could I say? And he starts telling him all this stuff. Then he has to go do those very things to this person that he despises, you know? So he got schooled right there by God. It's very ironic. And then he comes home. Sorry, so first he has to take Mordecai through the streets in the clothes of the king, and he has to call out in front of Mordecai that he has to go in front of him and say, "Thus shall it be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honor." He has to say this about his enemy, this guy. Yeah, it's an amazing unraveling of Haman's trap. Every single trap he set for Mordecai unraveled and became his trap. And it's not even done yet. Okay, but it's every single thing he planned against the Jews happens to him. Every wicked thing he planned against God's people, it visits back on him, you know? And it's similar to what it says. To those that curse you, I will curse those that curse you, right? I will bless those that bless you. And we do see this in this story. Yeah, he gets completely humiliated. It's hilarious. And his friends, now his wife knows. Now they're telling him, like, look, man, whatever we were saying before about building a gallows for this guy, listen, just drop it. Because if Mordecai be able to see the Jews before whom thou hast begun to fall, thou shalt not prevail against him, but shalt surely fall before him. So they're trying to tell him, listen, stop whatever you're doing, stop it, because you're not going to win this one, you know? But while they were yet talking with him, before they could even get out their good advice to him, because then maybe if he listened to them, he would have been spared, right? Maybe if he stopped what he was doing, he could have actually got out of the situation or something, right? But no, before they're even done talking to him, the king's chamberlains come to bring him back to Esther. Again, I would say this is God's doing. God doesn't want him to get out of it. God doesn't want him to turn around and no, he wants him to feel the full brunt of this thing, what he's done. But that's debatable, of course. You can think about that yourself. You know, I wouldn't say that's necessarily the way to read that, but that's the way I read it. But anyway. So chapter 7, should I read this whole thing too? I think so, probably. Maybe it's better to just read every chapter, right? So the king and Haman came to banquet with Esther the queen. And the king said unto Esther on the second day at the banquet of wine, what is thy petition, Queen Esther? And it shall be granted thee. What is thy request? And it shall be performed even to half of the kingdom. Then Esther the queen answered and said, If I have found favor in thy sight, O king, and if it please the king, let my life be given me at my petition, and my people at my request. For we are sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be slain, and to perish. But if we had been sold for bondmen and bondwomen, I had held my tongue, although the enemy could not countervail the king's damage. Then the king Ahasuerus answered and said unto Esther the queen, Who is he and where is he that durst presume in his heart to do so? And Esther said, The adversary and enemy is this wicked Haman. Then Haman was afraid before the king and the queen. And the king, arising from the banquet of wine in his wrath, went into the palace garden. And Haman stood up to make request for his life to Esther the queen, for he saw that there was evil determined against him by the king. Then the king returned out of the palace garden into the palace of the banquet of wine, and Haman was fallen upon the bed whereon Esther was. Then said the king, Will he force the queen also before me in the house? As the word went out of the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. And Harbonah, one of the chamberlains, said before the king, Behold, also the gallows 50 cubits high, which Haman had made for Mordecai, who had spoken good for the king, standeth in the house of Haman. And the king said, Hang him thereon. So they hanged him. So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Then was the king's wrath pacified. So, yeah, exactly. So a complete reversal of his whole plan. Everything he planned to do against Haman happened to him. I mean, against Mordecai happened to him. So, Ron, how come modern day Israel is wicked and their flag is a literal Baphomet? Why? Because that's just like, look, they're not worse than America with their 50 pentagrams on their flag and everything. It's like all the countries, man. All the countries are Masonic plots against God. Every country on the face of the earth. Israel's because they're wicked atheists mostly. I mean, the government of Israel, right? Not the people. The Jews, I mean, they're confused. I feel bad for them. But they're wicked too, unless they turn to Jesus. Anyway. Sorry, guys. I'm so tired. It is reassuring to me that God defends his saints so thoroughly. David often prayed his enemies to fall into their own traps. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, just like how it becomes a snare for them. The snare that they set for the Jews becomes a snare for them. It's the same thing happened to Haman. But now in chapter 7, now the Jews aren't out of the woods yet, okay? Because the decree of the king has already gone out all over the empire. On this specific day, the people of the empire are going to be given so much silver if they kill Jews, right? And it's like they're supposed to wipe them all out, even the little kids and everything. That decree has already gone out. So although Haman has been defeated, the Jews are not out of the woods yet. Okay, so I'm gonna read chapter 7 now. Yeah, it's more important to believe in Jesus than your country. I mean, I love Canada. I love the people of Canada, but the government is wicked and evil. And I would say the same thing about America. No offense to any Americans, but sorry, God is not in support of the American government, in my opinion. Anyway, I'm gonna read chapter 7 now. So the king and Haman came to banquet. Oh wait, sorry, I'm gonna read chapter 8 now. On that day, the king Ahasuerus. Wait, did I talk about this chapter? I guess I talked enough about it now, right? So they hung Haman on the gallows that they set up for Mordecai. Wait, you guys, did I talk about this stuff, or what do you think? I guess I didn't really talk about it that much. So okay, let's get into the verse by verse. So the king came and Haman came to banquet with Esther. The king said unto Esther, I praise our Father. God bless. What is thy petition, Queen Esther? And Esther says, she accuses Haman, although the enemy could not countervail the king's damage. If she says, if we had been silver bondmen and bondwomen, I would have held my tongue. But because he wants to perish, to slay them, destroy them, it's too much. And the king says, who is it? Who is doing this to you? And Esther says, the adversary and enemy is this wicked Haman. And Haman was afraid before the king and the queen. For some reason, the king gets up and walks out of the room. It's not quite clear why he does that. But in the meantime, Haman decides to beg the queen for his life. And somehow in the mix of all that, he ends up on the bed or something, and the queen is on the bed maybe, or something like that. He's fallen upon the bed whereon Esther was. So maybe maybe the bed here, like, because the thing is, in the ancient Near East, they would often eat on these kind of like recliner type furniture. So they lie down. So it might be that it's talking about. So she's lying down at the dinner table, as they all are. But while the king goes and leaves outside, and then Haman comes and he comes in. He's lying at her feet, kind of on her bed, quote unquote, and that's what they're talking about. Maybe. Let me show you that. Let me see. Okay. Sorry, you guys. I have one of these faces when I'm not like, what is it called? Resting. RBF. I have that big time. But anyway, so I wasn't. Oh, I wasn't supposed to show you this. Hold on. See how these beds are? See how they sit? They kind of like lie down almost, you know? So they're lying down and they're eating. They're lying beside the table that they eat at. See? So that's the type of thing. That's what I think when it says that he's lying on her bed. I think that's what they're talking about there. Oh, sorry. So weird. But yeah. So, so he's fallen upon the bed whereon Esther was. Then said the king, will he force the queen also before me? So then the king's like, what? He's freaking out. He's very angry, right? And they covered Haman's face. That means I think that they just arrested him. They put like a bag over his head and stuff. That's what they usually would do when they arrest people back then, especially in the Persian style. And so then they talk about the gallows, and then so he gets hung up on the same gallows, and the king was pacified. Okay. And then let me read this chapter 8 to you now. I've never seen that before. Oh, the thing about the beds? Yeah, that's interesting, right? Okay, so now let me see this. So that's kind of like when Jesus, in John when it says that he was resting on Jesus's bosom. Remember that? Remember that thing? That just means that they're like on those little bed things he's like lying really close to where Jesus was, almost to the point of that. That's what that's about, you know? That's why they're lying down. You know what I mean? Nicholas. So that's, if you never knew about that thing with the bed when they eat, that's why it says that. Anyway. Oh, good. I'm glad you learned that thing today. That's cool. See how God works? It's so amazing. Well, let me read you chapter 8 now. Chapter 8's a bit longer, but let's read the whole thing, okay? On that day did the king Ahasuerus give the house of Haman the Jews' enemy unto Esther the queen. And Mordecai came before the king, for Esther had told what he was unto her. And the king took off his ring, which he had taken from Haman, and gave it unto Mordecai. And Esther set Mordecai over the house of Haman. And Esther spake yet again before the king, and fell down at his feet, and besought him with tears to put away the mischief of Haman the Agagite, and his device that he had devised against the Jews. Then the king held out the golden scepter toward Esther. So Esther arose and stood before the king and said, if it please the king, and if I have found favor in his sight, and the thing seem right before the king, and I be pleasing in his eyes, let it be written to reverse the letters devised by Haman the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, which he wrote to destroy the Jews which are in all the king's provinces. For how can I endure to see the evil that shall come into my people? Or how can I endure to see the destruction of my kindred? Then the king Ahasuerus said unto Esther the queen and to Mordecai the Jew, Behold, I have given Esther the house of Haman, and him they have hanged upon the gallows, because he laid his hand upon the Jews. Write ye also for the Jews as it liketh you in the king's name, and seal it with the king's ring. For the writing which is written in the king's name, and sealed with the king's ring, may no man reverse. Then were the king's scribes called at that time in the 3rd month, that is, the month Sivan, on the 23rd day thereof, and it was written according to all that Mordecai commanded unto the Jews, and to the lieutenants, and the deputies and rulers of the provinces which are from India unto Ethiopia, and 127 provinces, unto every province according to the writing thereof, and unto every people after their language, and to the Jews according to their writing, and according to their language. And he wrote in the king Ahasuerus' name, and sealed it with the king's ring, and sent letters by posts on horseback, and riders on mules, camels, and young dromedaries, wherein the king granted the Jews which were in every city to gather themselves together, and to stand for their life, to destroy, to slay, and to cause to perish all the power of the people and province that would assault them, both little ones and women, and to take the spoil of them for a prey. Upon one day, in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, namely, upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month Adar. The copy of the writing for a commandment to be given in every province was published unto all people, and that the Jews should be ready against that day to avenge themselves on their enemies. So the post that rode upon the mules and camels went out, being hastened and pressed on by the king's commandments, and the decree was given at Shushan the palace. And Mordecai went out from the presence of the king in royal apparel of blue and white, and with a great crown of gold, and with a garment of fine linen and purple, and the city of Shushan rejoiced and was glad. The Jews had light and gladness and joy and honor. And in every province and in every city, whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree came, the Jews had joy and gladness, a feast and a good day. And many of the people of the land became Jews, for the fear of the Jews fell upon them. Okay. So that's chapter 8. So the king is telling them, he gave the house of Haman, the Jews' enemy, unto Esther the queen. So I would assume in this case what he's saying is that he gave the lands and the authority that Haman had unto Esther, like do with it what you will kind of thing. And she gave it to Mordecai. And the king gave the ring to Mordecai. So Mordecai's over the house of Haman. That is, like, these people, they have lands and stuff. They have estates, you know? So Mordecai's got all that. And he's also probably got kind of Haman's office as sort of second under the king. And then now she's beseeching the king with tears to put away the mischief of Haman. That is that law that they made, the pronouncement that he had gotten the king to sign. But the thing is, once the king, so he holds out the scepter, then she goes, she asks if it kills the king, reverse the letters devised by Haman, which he sent out to destroy the Jews. But the king says, no, well, the thing is, I've already hanged Haman. But write for the Jews as it liketh you, in my name, and I'll seal it with the king's ring. But the writing which is written in the king's name, and seal with the king's ring, may no man reverse. Whatever in the Persian system, if the king made a pronouncement, even he couldn't take it back. You know, it's so weird, right? But even that actually takes place in Daniel too. And there's another little thing like this where the king Darius makes the pronouncement that, you know, whoever doesn't do this thing, they have to go in the lion's den or whatever. And that's why Daniel had to get thrown in the lion's den. But Darius liked Daniel. He doesn't want to throw Daniel in the lion's den. Because he wrote this pronouncement, even the king can't take back his own pronouncement. That's their weird laws that they had. Their weird pagan, weird nonsense that they believe, you know? Then were the king's scribes called at that time in the 3rd month. So the scribes are called, and Mordecai commanded unto the Jews and the lieutenants, rulers of the provinces, India to Ethiopia, all the provinces, right? 127 provinces. He wrote to the Jews in Ahasuerus' name, sent letters by post on horseback, camels, and young dromedaries is another kind of camel. It's like I think the dromedary is the one with the 2 humps. They have the dromedary and the anyway, it's a kind of camel. Okay, you can look it up. The dromedary is either 1 hump or 2 humps. So there's another name for the other one, you know. I think dromedary is 2 humps, but anyway. So the king now their pronouncement, what Mordecai wrote, right, is that the king granted the Jews which were in every single city to gather themselves together, to stand for their life, to destroy, to slay, to cause to perish all the people that anyone like. So basically, okay, Jews, I put an order out that these people can kill you on this day, that they should in fact kill you. I actually order them to kill you, and they will get money for doing it. But now I'm going to give you this order, Jews. You can defend yourself. You can set yourself up, and you could even, those people try to kill you, you could kill them and kill their little ones and their women and take them for a spoil and a prey, just like how I said that they could do to you. And so he sent that out. Now the Jews get that. And it goes out to every Jew in the whole place. So the Jews are now they know, okay. There's hope for us. We don't have to just get destroyed. We can fight back. Maybe we can win this thing. And Mordecai is given a crown of gold, linen, and purple. He's dressed like a champ. Jews have light and gladness and joy and honor. And in every province, in every city, the Jews had joy and gladness, a feast and a good day. And many of the people of the land became Jews. For the fear of the Jews fell upon them. What does that mean exactly? It's a very interesting line, right? Many of the people of the land became Jews. I would say that means that they became saved, for one thing. But it probably means more than that. They went on to get circumcised and join the covenant, maybe. Or they might be something more like kind of like the Ethiopian eunuch from Acts chapter 8, where they're like God-fearers, you know, they fear the God of Israel. They're like what they call proselytes. Sometimes they would call the people that, you know. But they didn't get fully circumcised and all that. It's not quite clear here. But the fact that it says that they became Jews, it kind of implies that they got circumcised. Yeah, the strangers joined themselves on the nation of Israel, because they are able to do this. They are able to do this. I think it's Exodus 17, is it? It's Exodus 12. What am I talking about? Yeah, of course. I should remember. Okay. And all the congregation is, and when a stranger shall sojourn with thee, and will keep the Passover of the Lord, that is, they want to keep the Passover of the Lord, the stranger, right? When that happens, oh yeah, so you think the Jews in Persia got circumcised? Maybe, probably, but we don't know for sure. But anyway, in Exodus 12:48, when a stranger shall sojourn with thee and will keep the Passover to the Lord, let all his males be circumcised. That is, so when a stranger, they're talking about like when, you know how Abraham comes into the land and he's got his slaves, he's got his like flocks, and he's a rich person, right? So they're talking about that kind of person. And so when he says let all his males, it's all the males in his family and all the males that are slaves of his, all his workers or whatever, everyone he's got with him. If they want to keep the Passover, everyone in his household has to do this. to get circumcised, and then let him come near and keep it, and he shall be one as one that is born in the land. For no uncircumcised person shall eat thereof. So that may be what's going on in this line about how the people became Jews. But you guys think about that. So now, in chapter 9, this is kind of an interesting, weird thing because, well, okay, I'll read the first section, and then then we'll talk about it. Now, in the 12th month, that is the month Adar, on the 13th day of the same, when the king's commandment and his decree drew near to be put in execution, and the day that the enemies of the Jews hoped to have power over them, though it was turned to the contrary, that the Jews had rule over them that hated them, the Jews gathered themselves together in their cities throughout all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus, to lay hand on such as sought their hurts, and no man could withstand them, for the fear of them fell upon all people. And all the rulers of the provinces, and the lieutenants, and the deputies and officers of the king helped the Jews, because the fear of Mordecai fell upon them. For Mordecai was great in the king's house, and his fame went out throughout all the provinces, for this man Mordecai waxed greater and greater. Thus the Jews smote all their enemies with the stroke of the sword, and slaughter, and destruction, and did what they would unto those that hated them. And at Shushan the palace the Jews slew and destroyed 500 men, and Parshandata, and Dalphon, and Aspata, and Porata, and Adalia, and Aridata, and Parmashta, and Arisai, and Aridai, and Vajezata. The 10 sons of Haman, the son of Hamidata, the enemy of the Jews, slew they. But on the spoil laid they not their hand. On that day the number of those that were slain in Shushan the palace was brought before the king. And the king said unto Esther the queen, the Jews have slain and destroyed 500 men in Shushan the palace. And the 10 sons of Haman, what have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now what is thy petition? And it shall be granted thee. Or what is thy request further? And it shall be done. Then said Esther, if it please the king, let it be granted to the Jews which are in Shushan to do tomorrow also, according unto this day's decree, and let Haman's 10 sons be hanged upon the gallows. And the king commanded it so to be done. And the decree was given at Shushan, and they hanged Haman's 10 sons. But the Jews that were in Shushan gathered themselves together on the 14th day also of the month Adar, and slew 300 men at Shushan, but on the prey laid they not their hand. But the other Jews that were in the king's provinces gathered themselves together, and stood for their lives, and had rest from their enemies, and slew of their foes 70 and 5,000, but they laid not their hands on the prey. On the 13th day of the month Adar, and on the 14th day of the same rested they, and made it a day of feasting and gladness. But the Jews that were at Shushan assembled themselves together on the 13th day thereof, and on the 14th day thereof, and on the 15th day of the same they rested, and made it a day of feasting and gladness. Therefore the Jews of the villages that dwelt in the unwalled towns made the 14th day of the month Adar a day of gladness and feasting, and a good day, and of sending portions one to another. Okay. So now there's two orders that have gone out, right? There's the order to kill the Jews, and they're supposed to get money or something like that. That's one order that's gone out, right? And then another order has gone out that the Jews are allowed to defend themselves. So the Jews are ready. They gathered themselves together to lay hand on such as sought their hurts. And no man could withstand them, for the fear of them fell upon all people. And the rulers, and even all the rulers and the police or whatever, like the police, like army type people, like those kind of people, they're on the Jews' side because the fear of Mordecai fell on them. Mordecai has become powerful in the king's house. And so the Jews smote all their enemies, destroyed all their enemies, did what they would unto those that hated them. And at Shushan the palace, the Jews slew and destroyed 500 men. But you notice they do say they only destroyed the men. It doesn't say they destroyed the women and the children, which is what the other people were going to do to them, and also what they were actually given permission to do that themselves. But it said that they only destroyed 500 men. So I think that's significant. Well, what do you mean? What do you mean about this? If they did that, if they did what? The Jews, I think the Jews were merciful more. It's not like they like often people like will criticize this part of the Bible as if the Jews were given some permission to commit genocide or something, right, against the Amalekites. But it's not like. First of all, it doesn't really say that they went after the Amalekites or anything. They went after whoever was sought to hurt them. And it says that they killed men. It doesn't say they killed women and children as the other people were ordered. So yeah, I think the Jews were much more merciful than the people were going to show to them or whatever. Yeah? But in all these different places now, these are places in the Persian Empire. Oh, that was a comment about the people joining themselves into the nation and exiting. Yeah. Yeah, it would be interesting if they did that. So these are places in the Persian Empire, Parshandata. You see their names, how they have those. It almost sounds like almost Indian names, right? Parshandata, Dalfan, Aspata, Porata, Adalia, Aridata. So this is kind of like from their language, that Farsi language or something like that. And the 10 sons of Haman, the son of Hamadat, the enemy of the Jews, slew they. On the spoil, see this? On the spoil laid they not their hands. So once again, the Jews are much more merciful than they were given permission to do. They were given permission to take the spoil, kill the women and children. It doesn't seem like they're doing that. They don't take the spoil. They only kill men. So I think there is a difference there. I think the Bible is telling us something here. On that day, the number of those that were slain at Shushan the palace was brought before the king. So the king, he hears the report. He tells Esther, look, the Jews have done exactly as they're told. They're victorious. 10 sons of Haman, slain. What have they done in the rest of the provinces? What is that request further? Let it should be done. If it pleases the king, let it be granted that, according to this, that let it be granted to the Jews which are in Shushan to do tomorrow also according to this day's decree. So give us another day to do what we got to do to our enemies here. Yeah, I think it probably might have. Maybe. That's interesting that you say that. But we haven't heard anything, no response from the king about it yet. Although maybe the people would notice that. But so Esther asked for another day in Shushan. That's the city where the king's winter palace is. And she said, let Haman's 10 sons be hanged upon the gallows. Now, I don't think this is about hanging them, like hanging from the neck so that they die, because it did say that they slew them already. Yeah. The 10 sons of Haman, the son of Hamadatha, the enemy of the Jews, slew they. So they already are slain. They're dead, right? But here, I think they're going to literally hang them up, excuse me, as a way of saying, you know, this is what happens to the enemies of God's people, you know? And so the king commanded, but she asked that Haman's 10 sons be hanged, and the king commanded to be done. And so they hanged the 10 sons. So once again, I would say they're just hanging their dead bodies. They're displaying their dead bodies publicly to show. It's like about honor and shame, you know? Because this is the thing in that culture. Like our culture is kind of like, they call it a guilt culture, because we have this concept of God. There's one morality. God's watching you. So even if you do something privately, if you do something wrong privately, nobody knows, it's still God knows. So we feel guilt over doing wrong things. Back then, it was more about shame. So Haman is being shamed here. And when his sons are now hung up publicly, that's shaming his family, his house. Yeah. And then so the Jews of Shushan gathered themselves together again on the 14th day, the next day, and they slew 300 men. So 300 more men. They had already slain 500 men. They slew another 300 men at Shushan, that same place where the king's winter palace is. But they never laid their hand on the prey. They don't want that part of the reputation. They want to have that respect. It's similar to like when Abraham wouldn't take, when Abraham defeated the what do you call those people? Like the Babylonian people or whatever that were fighting him, that were the kidnapped Lot. So these guys, the Kedar Laomer, when they had the battle there, right? And Abraham heard that his brother was taken captive, so he went. And Abraham captured all the stuff back from them, right? And he wiped them. He basically wiped out all his opposition, got all the stuff back, got Lot and his wife's back, got all the stuff, everything he got back. But he didn't take anything. And he said, and the king's saying, look, you give me the people and you can take the goods. You can take all the goods that they stole. You can keep it because you're the one that did all the work. And Abraham says this, I lift up my hand unto the Lord, the Most High God, the possessor of heaven and earth, that I will not take from a thread even to a shoe latchet, that I will not take anything that is thine, lest thou shouldest say, I have made Abram rich. Save only that which the young men of Eden and the portion of the men which went with me. So he gives some for the men that are with him, but he doesn't take any for himself. And I think it's similar kind of idea here. They don't touch the spoil. They want to have that reputation, and also for their God to have that reputation among these people. Their God is different. Their God gave them victory, but their God doesn't make them go and kill all the little kids and take all your stuff. No, their God is a just God, a merciful God, you know? So I think that's part of what's going on here. But anyway, but the other Jews that were in the king's provinces gathered themselves together, stood for their lives, and had rest from their enemies, and slew their foes, 75,000. But they laid not their hands on the prey. So they killed 75,000 people around the whole empire, 127 provinces, right? It's the empire stretching from India all the way to Ethiopia. But so 75,000 people died across that whole empire, but they never laid their hand on the prey. Good. Thanks, Nicholas. Glad you liked it. So then they made a feast, and also those guys at Shushan, that same place where the king is, that they had a feast as well. And so they always made this feast. This is what they called Purim. This is their holiday. The Jews still celebrate this day. Purim. We do some different customs on this day. But they do send the portions. So that's like sending pieces of meat. The meat was kind of expensive back then. They have feasts and stuff. But anyway, let me read the rest of this chapter now. And Mordecai wrote these things and sent letters unto all the Jews that were in the provinces of the king Ahasuerus, both nigh and far, to establish this among them, that they should keep the 14th day of the month Adar and the 15th day of the same yearly, as the days wherein the Jews rested from their enemies, and the month which was turned unto them from sorrow to joy, and from mourning into a good day. That they should make them days of feasting and joy, and of sending portions one to another, and gifts to the poor. And the Jews undertook to do as they had begun, and as Mordecai had written unto them. Because Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the enemy of all the Jews, had devised against the Jews to destroy them, and had cast Pur, that is, the lot, to consume them and to destroy them. But when Esther came before the king, he commanded by letters that his wicked device, which he devised against the Jews, should return upon his own head, and that he and his sons should be hanged on the gallows. Wherefore they called these days Purim, after the name of Pur. Therefore, for all the words of this letter, and of that which they had seen concerning this matter, and which had come unto them, the Jews ordained and took upon them, and upon their seed, and upon all such as joined themselves unto them, so as it should not fail, that they would keep these 2 days according to their writing and according to their appointed time every year, and that these days should be remembered and kept throughout every generation, every family, every province, and every city, and that these days of Purim should not fail from among the Jews, nor the memorial of them perish from their seed. Then Esther, the queen, the daughter of Abihail, and Mordecai the Jew, wrote with all authority to confirm this second letter of Purim. And he sent the letters unto all the Jews to the 120 and 7 provinces of the kingdom of Ahasuerus, with words of peace and truth, to confirm these days of Purim in their times appointed, according as Mordecai the Jew and Esther the queen had enjoined them, and as they had decreed for themselves and for their seed, the matters of the fastings and their cry. And the decree of Esther confirmed these matters of Purim, and it was written in the book. So this is they won their victory. They defeated their enemies. They have shown mercy, I would say, more than their enemies were planning to show them. And now they have had their victory and they're feasting. Okay, and Mordecai wrote these things. And so he wrote letters to all the Jews in all the provinces all over the empire that they should always keep this day, the 14th day of the month Adar, 15th day of the same yearly, the 14th and the 15th day yearly, as these days of where they're going to rest and they're going to celebrate. From morning, when their days return from sorrow to joy, from mourning into a good day. And they should make them days of feasting and joy, of sending portions one to another and gifts to the poor. So they send gifts to each other and to the poor people. Okay. I mean, I don't know if Jews do that actually today, but they're supposed to. And the Jews undertook, well, I don't know if they're supposed to, but that was the custom back then. The Jews undertook to do as they had begun and as Mordecai had written unto them. Because Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the enemy of all Jews, had devised against the Jews to destroy them, and had cast Pur, that is, the lot, to consume them and to destroy them. When Esther came before the king, he commanded by letters that his wicked device, which he had devised against the Jews. So the Pur, the lot thing, this is why they call it Purim, right? Because of this lot thing that he was casting the lot. But I'm not exactly sure what the significance of this is. I remember being taught about this, like there's some kind of interesting thing here to this or something. So this is the loan word from Persian. This Pur is not a Hebrew word, okay? The Hebrews would call the lot Urim and Turim. No, sorry, Urim and Tumim. That's how the Hebrews would call the lot. But these Persians call it Pur or Purim. And I guess that's the name of the feast for some reason. I'm not sure. There's something was remember they were saying about how Haman cast a lot. It's weird how they say that thing. I don't know why that's that, but they do say that. Because okay, you see in chapter 3 here, this is when Laman's first hatching his plan against the Jews, right? And he's like, in the first month, that is the month Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, they cast Pur, that is the lots, before Haman from day to day, and from month to month to the 12th month, that is the month Adar. It's very interesting, this line here. I'm not exactly sure. Let me check out in my commentary here. Nehemiah talks about what? Is this because the Jews weren't speaking Hebrew at the time? That's debatable. I think there was definitely a lot of Jews speaking Aramaic or something along those lines, but not clear. I think Nehemiah talks about that. Yeah, it's some kind of cultural thing. Nehemiah has some Aramaic in the book as well. But I do think that many of them still spoke Hebrew because they talk about that. We read some line about that. There was a line about that, how they're speaking the tongue of the Hebrews or something. Oh man, I can't remember. Where was that? Where was that? Where were they saying that? Was it Nehemiah saying that, how they could speak the tongue of the Hebrews? Nehemiah talked about the Jews not speaking their own tongue. Well, I thought he was saying that they were speaking their tongue. Hang on, let me see this. Sorry guys, I hope this isn't boring you or anything. So okay, in Ezra 4:7, and Ezra 4:7, look at this. In the days of Artaxerxes wrote Bishlam, Mithridat, and Tabeel, and the rest of their companions unto Artaxerxes, king of Persia, and the writing of the letter was written in the Syrian tongue and interpreted in the Syrian tongue. I don't know actually. You know what? I'll do some research on that to find out more about that. But anyway, so they're casting the poor. So I'm gonna find out more about the poor thing and about the language that they're probably speaking at this time. Yeah, it's likely. I mean, for sure, they certainly probably almost all spoke Aramaic at this time. But whether that was like the only language they knew how to speak or anything, I don't know. But anyway, so he wrote this letter out to everybody. They're celebrating now. They have this feast now that's going to be there yearly. Every year they're going to do this because Mordecai's a big guy in the empire, so he can do this kind of thing. He can set up these kind of laws. Yeah, I can't remember for sure about Nehemiah either. I think it may be about the children who were the wives who weren't Jews. Yeah, the thing about the wives, that's from Ezra, but it's also from Nehemiah too. Yeah, they talk something about the language or something like that, right? Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about, man. But anyway, we'll look into that. Or you could do some research too, Nick, if you got time. Maybe you could find out something I can't find out. So they're gonna celebrate this day forever, okay? They undertook to do as Mordecai had written. So this is just saying why. Why did they have this thing? And this is because this happened. Haman had this plan to destroy them, cast poor, to consume them, to destroy them. But Esther came before the king, commanded by letters that his device should return upon his own head, that he and his son should be hanged. Therefore, they called these days Purim, after the name of Pur. Therefore, for all the words of this letter and of that which they had seen concerning this matter, and which should come unto them, the Jews ordained and took upon them and upon their seed. So they had this holiday because of that. And that's what they called it. They called it Purim because of the poor. Purim is like the plural. Like whenever you see the im ending, like Elohim, Aloha is the singular, Elohim is the plural. Purim is the plural of that. Yeah. Other words are like that too, obviously. So then they had this thing, they finished that up. And that these days will be remembered throughout every generation, the memorial of them, or the memorial of them perished from their seed. And Esther the queen, the daughter of Abihail, and Mordecai wrote all these, the second letter, sent letters to all the Jews to keep this holiday forever, right? To confirm these days of Purim and their times appointed, according as Mordecai the Jew and Esther the queen had enjoined them. And as they had decreed for themselves and for their seed the matters of the fastings and their cry. And the decree of Esther confirmed these matters of Purim, and it was written in the book. And now chapter 10 now is kind of short, so I'll just read it. And the king Ahasuerus laid a tribute upon the land and upon the isles of the sea, and all the acts of his power and of his might, and the declaration of the greatness of Mordecai, whereunto the king advanced him, are they not written in the book of the chronicles of the kings of Media and Persia? For Mordecai the Jew was next unto King Ahasuerus, and great among the Jews, and accepted of the multitude of his brethren, seeking the wealth of his people, and speaking peace to all his seed. Amen. So this is another example, I would say, of that thing that God told to Abraham, that his seed, that they would possess the gate of their enemies. Thy seed shall possess the gate of his enemies. That's what God's saying to Abraham. Okay, so that's what I think is happening here. See how Mordecai sits at the gate of the king? At the gate. And now when his enemies were the Amalekites, right? They tried to take them out. No, they got taken out. So that's what I think is happening there. The king Ahasuerus laid a tribute upon the land and upon the isles of the sea. Laid a tribute, that means he laid a tax. Okay? And all the acts of his power and of his might, and the declaration of the greatness of Mordecai, whereunto the king advanced him, are they not written in the book of the chronicles of the kings of Media and Persia? All the acts of his power and of his might, the declaration. So I guess this is similar to the line we read in the Chronicles and stuff, or in Kings, how these things, the other acts of this king, are they not written? Are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Media and Persia? We don't have this book, of course, but wherever this book it is, or wherever it was written there, right? For Mordecai the Jew was next unto King Ahasuerus, and great among the Jews, and accepted of the multitude of his brethren, seeking the wealth of his people and speaking peace to all his seed. So, notice Esther isn't even mentioned anymore, right? And it's interesting because that's why I say Mordecai and Esther are both kind of like the heroes of this book. But, yeah, the fulfillment of the covenant, right? With the way he said that he would, thy seed shall possess the gate of his enemy. Yeah, man. That's why you see the Jews, you can't take them out. You try to take them out, you get taken out. See how Germany, I mean, I'm not even saying, like, once again, obviously I don't believe in all that stuff, but even whatever they did try to do to the Jews, they got completely destroyed for them. Nehemiah 8:8 and 13:24. That's interesting. Let's check it out. So they read in the book and the law of God distinctly and gave the sense and caused them to understand the reading. Yeah, so they're reading the law of God, right? So that's clearly in Hebrew. And then so I guess the people but maybe they didn't understand. So that's why they had to give the sense and cause them to understand the reading. But I think what this is actually referring to is that they explain. This is the same way that we would explain, we kind of expound on Bible verses. We don't just read them to people, right? We kind of explain the things. I think it's what they're talking about. And their children spake half in the speech of Ashdod and could not speak in the Jews' language, but according to the language of each people. Yeah. That's a good one. In those days also I saw I Jews that had married wives of Ashdod, of Ammon, and of Moab. So some of the Jews who had foolishly married wives of these other Gentile nations, they're the ones that have these issues with language, which may lead you to believe that the other Jews could speak the language. I mean, that's how I usually read that. But what do you think? I don't know. You might take that to be saying that the other Jews who didn't marry off their kids to these other people, that their kids could speak the Hebrew language. Yeah, like a mixed bag over there. But anyway, so that is the amazing book of Esther. And like I say, there's unfortunately a lot of bad thoughts, bad explanations about this book online. Many people trying to say, and the classic thing is to say that Vashti is some kind of hero, and that Esther is not like a moral exemplar. And no, I would say she absolutely is a moral exemplar, and that's what she's there for. Okay. Good. I'm glad you learned a lot. Praise the Lord. Praise God, And for all the rest of you, I hope you learned something as well. I'm going to just say a quick prayer and then we can call it a day, okay? Esther's a hero, yes. She's a moral exemplar. She is an amazing woman, amazing hero of the faith. And she shows courage and faith that we can all aspire to. Heavenly Father, Almighty God, let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable unto you, O God, our rock and our salvation. Father, thank you so much for this book of Esther. What a beautiful story. What a beautiful book. What an amazing piece of storytelling. And what an amazing drama we saw play out. And amazing to see your work in the lives of your people. And we see the same work in our own lives, Father. When I look at my life, I can see how your hands have protected me and guided me. And I just thank you for that. And I thank you for guiding all of us who are watching today and who maybe watching later on YouTube. Father, I just ask that you bless all those people, give them strength, give them wisdom to understand your word. Help us grow in the grace and knowledge of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, Father. On him be glory forever and ever. Amen. All right. So thanks so much for watching, everyone. We're making some good time here. We're going into tomorrow, and next time we're going to start on Job. Job's going to be a while. Job's going to take us a while to get through, but that'll be a very good enjoyable book to read as well. So I look forward to reading that with you. And we'll begin that one on Monday. And for now, thanks for watching Toronto Bible Study. Hallelujah.
Okay. I'm studying the Bible in Toronto. 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 Studying the Bible with Mike, Sam, Pat. These other YouTubers are just so trash. Hit the thumbs up if you want to support. Go follow Mike as he follows the Lord. I'm studying the Bible in Toronto. 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 You better watch out, Mike's calling out the shills. If you're not free grace, you need to sit down and chill. We're not hyper grace, you know we keep it real. Eternally secure, you know that we're sealed. We don't back low, we're not workspace heretics. Mike's not in it for the money, trying to get a lick. They out here selling their souls for a couple clicks. Becoming Freemasons so they can't just get rich. I'm studying the Bible in Toronto. 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 Shout out to Mike, Sam, Pat. Check out his channel, Toronto Bible Study. Subscribe and like.